Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm an adult services librarian here at the Westland Public Library. I'm the one responsible for organizing our Dying Well series, as well as filming and editing our artist interviews. In this video, I have the pleasure of combining both of these series into a single video. During the month of March 2023, artwork from the Buzzy's Bees Give Grief a Voice project will be on display in our community room. Buzzy's Bees is a Beaverton, Oregon-based nonprofit that provides support to families all over the nation experiencing grief due to the unexpected loss of a young child. Since 2019, when Buzzy's Bees created the Give Grief a Voice program, 45 families have had their story captured by commissioned artists and professional writers. This exhibit features story excerpts along with reproductions of the original artwork from the Give Grief a Voice project. This month, I had the opportunity to sit down with some of the artists from this project. During these discussions, we talked about their artwork, process, as well as their role in helping families with their grief. These were spectacular conversations, and I hope you enjoy listening to them. I also hope that you can join us on March 22nd from 7 to 8 p.m. for our Give Grief a Voice panel, where we will be having a live discussion and interview with those in the project. A link to the program is in the description below. I want to thank you for having these difficult conversations with us, and I hope that you enjoy this program. Welcome, Vanessa Smith.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining me today. So, tell us about yourself.
Well, I am born and raised in the Pacific Northwest. I was born in Portland and moved all over the state of Oregon throughout my childhood, and eventually settled in the Corvallis area where I am now. I was raised by a designer and a calligrapher. My grandmother taught calligraphy and design up at Reed College and Portland State. And my dad is an architect out of Salt Lake City, Utah, but he and my mother met because he was one of my grandmother's students at Portland State University. So art has been prominent in my life my entire childhood and my adult life growing up. And with that, I found a love in fine art. So I studied fine art and art history for many years as a hobby, and then used it as my minor for my degree, which I went back and got in 2017, majoring in graphic design, which is what I do professionally. And I've really liked to embody with my professional graphic design work, as well as with my traditional artistic styles, a lot of childhood nostalgia, bold colors, and mythology. And when I say mythology, I mean, the world mythology. So not necessarily just, Greek or Roman. I like to take from, urban legends or just tall tales, stories that we all grew up with and that we all love, and just somehow trying to intertwine them in with pop culture and things that, we, from all generations can relate to and find something appreciative in.
Wonderful. That's just so great.
Thanks.
So you have two pieces within our collection.
I do.
Talk us through your process of the work, going from the initial concepts, talking with the family, to the final products.
Okay. I don't have any communication myself with the families in the beginning or during my process. I work with the team at Buzzy's Bees, who does the initial interviews with the families. And with that, they send me videos, the written stories provided by the families, as well as any added kind of things that might help me develop an idea and a concept for the painting. And my process really starts by kind of diving in to the stories. For instance, in one of the paintings that I had done, I believe it was the first painting that I did with Buzzy's Bees in 2021. There was a children's book that was really inspirational and really carried this family through what they had been going through. So I bought the book. I went out and I bought the children's book and I read it and I became familiar with it. And I try to put myself in their place, in their mindset, to understand their emotions, their feelings, and just everything that they've gone through to get them to where they are now, to be seeking out this sort of support. Some of the other families have provided their songs that they associate with their memory and their path, and so I'll add those songs to my Spotify list and I'll listen to them. And even after the paintings are done, they still remain on my Spotify list and I still listen to them, and they still, have the same impact. And with that, I just kind of start loosely sketching and developing a story based on their thoughts and their feelings and their meanings behind the ideas that they have, and are provided to me. And from there, it just goes on to painting.
Yeah. I told myself I wouldn't cry during these videos.
I
I will see if I can make it to the end because I'm already getting teary-eyed.
Same.
Just
I'm a horrible crier too. I cry at everything, and so I get very emotional. So
well, especially just the fact that you go that extra mile to check or to purchase the book or even listen to the music that helps the family get through their pain and processing. It's just like, yeah, just how do you find the strength to do stuff like that?
well, back in 2015, my partner and I suffered a loss of our own. And I really, I really kind of slumped down and got, I went through all the depression and I didn't know what to do. I was, questioning everything. And excuse me. And at that time, I had been I was a injury rehab massage therapist for 15 years. And I kind of found myself kind of backpedaling out of that career just because I felt like it was time to move on. And so then after we suffered the loss that we did with our own child, I immediately went and enrolled in school again and decided to follow my passion. And so I took all of that depressed and negative energy that was just kind of swirling around me, all this unquestionable, what's next, what's going to happen, who am I, why did I deserve, why did I deserve this? I took it and I decided to fuel it into reaching out for my dreams. And that's when I went to school and got the degree in graphic design and with a minor in art history. And I just promised myself that I was going to put my all into that. I was going to treat it as if it was my sweet pea. That's what we were calling the little. And, I told myself that I was going to allow this drive into this new path to interrupt fun time, interrupt, family time, interrupt anything, just as a child would. And I let that be my support and my driving. So when I say awarded this opportunity to work with Buzzy's Bees, it just felt like another step, like another confirmation that I was on the right path and that I was doing it not only for the families, but doing it for my own healing. And it's just been an incredible, rewarding process, and I'm forever grateful.
That was beautiful. I could basically end the sorry wrap. That was beautiful. One, my condolences. I was not aware.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna just take us off to the side really fast. What was your favorite part about art history? That was your minor. That happens to be my major. What drew you to art history?
What drew me into it?
Yeah.
Um, well, it's just, like I said, my grandmother, she taught calligraphy and design, but she's a world-renowned calligrapher. So kind of growing up in that world of a lot of Gothic art and a lot of,
Mhm.
just kind of being surrounded in all of that. I've always been drawn to it. And then I have, like art history books everywhere. I think in every room of the house. And just even from a young child, I was never able to focus on reading novels. As I wanted, things with pictures, and I wanted things that would teach me. So I would read about all these, famous artists throughout history. And then I started equating them and putting them in together with points in time and points in history that you might learn in your basic history class in high school or something, like the Industrial Revolution and and the Civil War, and kind of focusing on the artwork that was done in during those times, and seeing how they were used as coping, political statements, their own, kind of activism. And it just really opened up this whole world of just excitement for me, and understanding and really embracing how art has been a part of human history since the beginning of time, and how it really intertwines and entangles in with our everyday lives, regardless of whether we are aware of it or whether we are appreciative of art or not. It is something that you can't go anywhere or look at anything without seeing something that was created and something that was really thought of and had that kind of aha moment from a creator. And it just kind of seems almost like a magical escape to me.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I studied it as well. It's kind of hard to not look
Yeah,
outside and see the influences of history all around you, even when we consider things
absolutely.
contemporary and modern. Uh,
Absolutely.
Wonderful. I did want to talk to you about the two specific pieces that that are in the
Mhm.
collection this month. Um, can you tell us a little bit about why you chose those? uh, I know that they're for the family. I was going to mention more like the material, what drew you to painting in terms of expression of this emotion and of this idea. What drew you to that medium, being your graphic, since you went into graphic design and everything? Because acrylics, they could be temperamental. They can be,
They can.
some people diverge, go to watercolor. So what drew you specifically to that, and how does that help you express yourself?
Well, with acrylic paint, I really love the boldness of the pigments. And I like the fact that it is in the realm of traditional mediums, so watercolor and oils, um, and other, inks and things like that. It really, to me, I've been comfortable with it because it seems a little bit more forgiving, because I'm able to apply some of my graphic design knowledge to layers.
Mhm.
Um, I do create artwork in a multitude of other mediums. I do watercolors, I do oils, and gouache is another one of my favorites, because to me, it's like that happy medium between watercolor and acrylic paint. So you're able to get kind of some of those beautiful washes, but that same kind of, deep pigmentation that you would get with acrylics. And I've been I've been playing with acrylic paintings since childhood. It was the first one, that it was the first medium that I ever picked up, aside from crayons. And it really kind of grew with me. And it's just kind of been where I live, where my, kind of like a safety blanket for me. I've been working lately to develop more of a take into other mediums. I've been working with some sculpting and wood burning and trying to see how I could incorporate those with the paintings that I do. Because the paintings that I do for this organization, I do them on 24-inch by 24-inch wood cradle boards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so because of that, it will allow me to, explore a little bit more if I wanted to do some carving in it to kind of add a little bit of more depth or texture. And that's really what I'm wanting. I'm wanting to see it grow. I'm wanting to see it develop, and I'm wanting to, explore more. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be able to, play. It's like a playground for me, and it's therapeutic, and it's just wonderful.
Wonderful. I proposed to you, I jumped you with this question right before we were getting started with the interview, so feel free to approach it.
Mhm.
How do you talk about dying? Again, I was not aware of your background, so I think that has been forced upon you, as some of us may find ourselves. And then there's those that are part of this program who are taking an active role in discussing it. So what helps you through these discussions? Not only with yourself and your personal endeavor, but trying to understand the families as well.
Right. That's a really tough one. I appreciate the question. It's a Speaking about death is very awkward for a lot of people. And truth be told, when you personally experience a death so close to you, it's really hard to talk to other people about it, not because, and I can only speak for myself, but not because I'm feeling like I don't want to talk about it, but it's really because a lot of people don't know how to listen. They don't know how to hear about it. It makes them feel uncomfortable, which then, kind of translates into body language, facial expressions, which can then affect my ability to really kind of speak about it. And so I think one of the greatest things that I've learned is to really kind of push through those and understand that not everybody is as comfortable with this topic. And it's not to say that I'm comfortable with it, but it's something that you grow to accept as part of your life. And I've accepted it as part of my life and part of my journey. And I focus on all of the good things that came from, the time that I had, before the incident happened. And I focus on the ways that I've grown as a result of having to go through something so traumatizing. And I'm able to kind of relate that empathy to the families, and allowing them to know that their story is unique to them. you know I think, and a lot of times it's hard when you talk about something like that, and somebody instantly can come up and be like, oh, that happened to me, or I know exactly what you're going through. And that's not true. Everybody's emotions and everybody's you know thoughts and feelings around what they've experienced are going to be different, no matter, even if the actual physical scenario plays out identical. It's all unique. Everybody is special in those thoughts and those feelings. And I think realizing that is very helpful, um, in moving forward and speaking about this with the families, and also about my own experiences.
Can I say just how wonderful it was to discover Buzzy Bees? You
Mm.
had an open call for artists
Yeah.
a year and a half ago, and they submitted. And I'm like, fortuitous timing. I'm having this awkward conversation in my library right now. And the more and more I speak to them, and the more and more I hear about the artists and the people involved with it, I just can't believe that the whole organization, there's so many people that have made it up, but just the people that keep moving forward to help reach out to other people and parents experiencing their losses is just, I'm just so glad that somebody has filled that role in our community, and I'm just so honored to be talking to people like you and them, and the strength that you all exhibit to be able to do what is often difficult for most of us. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
This is usually a time in my artist interviews where I want to allow you to thank anybody. Definitely the Buzzy Bees. Thank you so much for all your wonderful things. But is there anybody in your personal life who has supported you that you just want to give a quick shout out to? So when you forward this video, they can feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
Oh gosh, there's so many. Everybody in my family. I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers, and they've all been super supportive of my journey and my path and everything that I've gone through. And of course, my dad, with his support and his knowledge, with his background in architectural design, has really kind of given me the courage to, and belief that I can do this. I can make this happen for myself. And my grandmother, the calligrapher, she passed away in November of 2020. And I was back and forth up to Seattle helping take care of her in those last moments. And she was a huge inspiration to me artistically, and has always been a powerhouse, in that kind of realm for me. So I'd like to thank her. And then for connecting me with Buzzy's Bees, of course, I'd like to thank, the team at Buzzy's Bees for bringing me on. But I have a friend, Dr. Melissa Bird, who is a wonderful woman, and she's incredibly compassionate and empathetic, and she's such a strong supporter and such an inspiration. And I really, I feel like I owe her a lot of the thanks for getting me involved with Buzzy's Bees. It was an event that she had, and with her event, she was having a silent art auction. And she reached out to me and asked me if I could please submit a piece, or if I would like to. I said, sure, of course. I've got this, painting that I love so much, but, as an artist, you get paintings and they build up, they build up. And so I was like, I think that this is one that maybe somebody else might love too. And I believe it was Amy from Buzzy's Bees who bought that painting in that auction, and shortly then reached out to me and, hey, I purchased your painting. I think it's great. And then kind of, talked me into and walked me through what Buzzy's Bees does. And there wasn't even a second thought. I didn't even need a minute to think about it. It was instantly I think this was meant to happen. I'm there. I'm in 100%. So, yeah. So thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for coming and speaking to us. It's a very personal topic, but I hope everyone gets a chance to come and see the exhibition. It is traveling, that will be on our website, so everybody can continue to enjoy your art throughout Clackamas County, but at least visit our library throughout March in order to see your work. Again, thank you so much, Vanessa Smith, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. That was so beautiful.
We did it.
Just really, oh, your story is so beautiful. Like, your work itself is beautiful. So that was your
Thank you.
development and skill is clearly there. And I love the idea of multimedia, especially. I was not aware, since it's not in our building, I would have noticed immediately. My husband's a woodworker, so I'm very attuned to things that are, wood, and I would have loved to go up. And in fact, that's often what I ask artists when they're here is I'm like, why did you choose that medium? Of course, you discuss that right away, so I didn't have to. But people are like, well, it's canvas and canvas. I'm like, it doesn't have to be. Why is it a thick canvas? Why is it a thin canvas? So,
Well, one of the things is specifically with the Charlie's painting,
yeah.
in the story, like you'll see, like when you look at the painting, or it says Charlie everywhere, Charlie and Charlotte, it's everywhere. And because in the story, that's one of the things that the family was saying, they started noticing it on newspaper print. There was a pipe in their house that had Charlotte written on it, and so that's why on the painting there I drew that pipe. But I even to start that one in particular, I scored the name Charlie in the wood before I started any underpainting. So if you look really closely, I think it's even upside down, but you can kind of see it scored. And so I haven't really done any carving in my paintings yet. That's something that I'm hoping to develop soon. But it just like the process really kind of just starts out messy, and there's a lot of confusion and, second guessing and doubts, but it all comes through at the end.
Especially since you're trying to memorialize something, you're just like, I hope they like it.
Exactly. And the Kennedy Rose one, I was really nervous about that one because the family has Navajo heritage.
Yeah.
And so again, I reached out to my friend, Dr. Melissa Bird, who is Native American. And she connected me with one of her cousins who is an artist, and he is Navajo. And I wanted to talk to him because I really wanted to kind of add some implements and add some things, but I didn't want to be disrespectful to the community in that way, being just a white lady painting, a Native American inspired piece. And so I worked with him for quite a while in the concept portion of that painting to kind of help develop a feel in the scene. And so that was really kind of exciting and just part of the journey. So yeah.
Do you mind if I add some of that information to
Go for it.
Yeah, like I haven't stopped recording just because it gets really awkward later when I'm trying to figure out everything. So, but that was actually really I'm sorry, I'm looking at the art, like I posted them side by side so I could be like, yeah, I totally see it.
Yeah.
So are you saying I could see Charlie in the pipes, or Charlotte, sorry.
Yeah.
Is that it's lighter? So is that the etched part, or was that just done in a okay?
That was done in paint. The etched part is you really kind of have to catch the light because it spans across the whole canvas.
Yeah.
And so
okay.
Yeah. So it's one of the things that you can't see in a picture. You have to see it on the real thing.
That's how we get them.
And you won't even know, even when you know it's there and you're looking at it, you can't see it clearly as, oh, that says Charlie, but you can see some scoring under the painting that kind of looks like a messy handwriting.
So, Diana, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started?
Yeah, definitely. So I have always been an artist, to my mother's dismay, all my life, collecting objects and found things and basically what she considered a big mess everywhere. Little pieces of paper, she used to say all the time. So I've always loved just making things out of things, don't throw that away. I'm that person, as you can see. So I'm always making art all the time. And I did study. My stepdad was an artist, a professional artist, so I did learn a lot of fundamentals when I was really young. And then all the way through high school, I was an advanced art student. Took some classes in college, and then decided that wasn't really for me because they didn't really love process-based art in college. I failed a watercolor class because my pigments were too bright, and I thought, this isn't for me. Why am I paying you for this? I've already learned these things in high school and whatnot. So I spent a lot of time after that just working with kids, actually. So I did a lot of, and with a lot of art therapists. So I studied under a lot of art therapists, worked in a lot of art studios that worked with children, and then just started an after school arts education program when my kids were small too. And I did that for about 6 years, did a lot of camps and worked at a couple of process-based art studios. And that was so wonderful, not profitable, but very fun. And then I decided to go back to school and I became an astrologer, actually. So that's what I do also. And I incorporate my art into that. So I draw charts and do paintings of astrology and charts and make all kinds of art in that work as well. And then through a mom networking group, I met Amanda, who is the founder of Buzzy's Bees. And at that time, it was brand new, and she was looking for artists to be a part of the program. And she reached out to me, and I was excited, which was surprising to her, I think, because I was like, oh, I'm want to be a death doula. Like I'm totally comfortable with that environment. It does not scare me, and I don't worry about my reactions to it. And so I got started right away with my first piece, and as a magical person, it was such an empowering and wonderful thing because it was a process. So it fit really well into my process-based artist practice, yeah, and now that I just do art commissions and mostly Buzzy's Bees paintings all the time. So by the time I finish and recover, the year has ended and I'm starting a new cycle. So yeah, that's about me.
I do want to mention to our general audience that we actually have a YouTube recording of our end-of-life doula. What is an end-of-life doula? Where you can learn more information about what you were just saying.
Yeah.
How you can be there for somebody, or the end-of-life doula services that are, it's growing, which is really great. We want to see that happen because they really help families in their time of need, not as a medical sense, what do you need when you've reached your end of life? So,
right. Yeah.
One thing I did want to ask as a follow-up is, can you briefly describe your what is process-based art?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So process-based art is really just about how you feel going through the process of making something versus having a plan for what you're making, like a sketch and I'm trying to draw a dog. And so that is the goal. And then here is the product, right? That's really how we look at art a lot in this culture now, rather than, getting emotions out through a therapeutic, like anger is, scratching or, cutting things. It can be a very good emotional remediation. So it's really it's also about seeing art in things, like what is art? Is this pile of trash art? And so it really dives into that, like, art is subjective comment that people say all the time, like, well, what does that even mean? It's like, well, how do you feel when you see it? How do you feel when you hold it or come in contact with it? And then, how would you feel if you made something like that, or you tried? The process can be frustrating. Even if it's frustrating, it's still part of the overall creation of the piece. So yeah, that's what process-based art is.
Well, and I think that point on frustration, it's just like, okay, what is that frustration? Is it frustration because you don't have the skill, or is it
Right.
frustration? And most of the time it's like, because it's not conveying what I'm trying to convey. And I think
Yeah.
that that's an excellent point to about process-based art, is to
Yeah.
recognize that is actually a good thing. Like
Yeah.
there is an opportunity for you to change your skill set, but really it's like, where is the frustration coming from? So
Right. Or judgment too is a big
yeah.
one. I think that process-based art tries to remove is like, if you're trying to make a dog and you end up with an abstract piece of art, that's okay. It's a dog to you, right? You were trying to make a dog. There's a dog in there somewhere. The dog vibe was present, right? And that's actually what really matters in the end. Even if you throw that piece of art away afterwards, it wasn't the piece of art. It was, moving through those feelings of frustration or learning, which gets harder as we go, like, learning a new thing. So yeah, it's an emotional process, really, is what it means, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so you have 3 pieces that are on display in this exhibition, and I want you to talk us through your process, because 2 of them are very unique, or 2 of them are kind of similar. One of them is very unique. Of course, each family is dynamic. So what is your process from the initial interview with the family, or even just hearing about their story, to the works that are currently on display?
Well, it's interesting because we, as the artists, as the illustrators, we don't meet the families. We don't talk to them. We just get the story from the writer who actually sat with them. And the writer chooses from a lot of parts of their story, right, to create this narrative. So sometimes we don't hear the whole story. We get whatever they decide is in the final story. So the interpretation of that is variable for sure. For me, it's always a magical process. So I read the story and then I sit and wait for the child to come to me, actually. So, and then, I obviously then go back and sort of merge that with what the parents have said. But ultimately, it's kind of like a bunch of images that I get from the child at first. So it really depends on the age of the child, and like the energy that comes through from them first. So that's always the starting process. And sometimes that doesn't always make sense to me at the beginning either. I'll be like sketching and trying to like go, wait, what are you saying? What are you trying to say? Or what is this image that you're trying to share? And so I'll ask clarifying questions sometimes. I'll come back with like, give me a picture of the salad tongs that they played with, like, so do you have a picture? What color were they? Show me. It's even less than seeing pictures of the children themselves, which you'll notice I often like paint them from behind so that you don't see their face anyway. One of the things I learned early on was that, the parents have enough pictures of their kids. Usually that's not what they're looking for. So they're looking for more of an illustration of their story. So that always kind of sticks with me is trying to capture them in action, or them doing something in the story. So those are all very different pieces. One of the one that's more abstract, it was for a stillborn child. So she didn't really have like a life that they had stories to tell about. So it was more a story about their life. But the really interesting thing about that piece was they live in Yachats, Oregon. And when I received the story over email, I was in Yachats because I was born there. And so I go there a couple times a year and, kind of have a little retreat time. And I had been on the beach that week that I was there collecting all the little things that I do. And one of the things that I kept finding were pelican feathers. There's a lot of pelicans in that area, but you don't usually see their feathers like this prominent, and big ones too. And so I'm not even a feather collector either, but I was like, oh, I'm gonna get these, are so cool. I don't know why I want them so much. And then I got the story and I was like, oh, okay. Like I'm already downloading this information before I've even received the story. And I had collected a bunch of other things while I was there as well. And so when I got back and started working on the piece, the thing you won't be able to tell from that print is that I actually stitched thread into the canvas to make the map, which is what that is. And the parent story was like about how they met, where they got married, and where they let their baby go. So it was kind of this like long journey. So that map is actually Oregon and Mexico and Costa Rica, kind of, loosely, abstractly stitched. And then I took some sand from the beach that I had collected that day when I was there. And so it's like sand and glitter, making this sort of like topographic looking map. Because the story that they told was that they had, released her into the ocean. And I was like, well, now she's everywhere, right? And so there's like a little dot that I was like, this is the island in where she is. This is where she's happy to be. So that was kind of, the art kind of returns with a narrative. It like responds with another narrative. So that one was a little bit, that one was much more like abstract and also much more in my own style, which I like to do abstract pieces myself. Which is interesting in that I ended up doing all of those more comic book versions. Because, that was based on Gio's story, that his family had said, he was like a superhero. And I was like, well, of course he's going to be a literal superhero then. Yeah. But then it, became this thing that I was like, oh, I've forgotten how much I enjoy this type of illustration. One of the things when you're in school is they do give these assignments that make you really go like, ugh, I don't want to do this, like, what is this? Yeah. And so I was like, but I know how, I know how to do it. And then it just kind of like came out of me, like the colors. I mean, I just look at that piece sometimes and I think, who made this? Like, it wasn't me. I definitely felt like it was him, like giving this very clear message to his family, like, this is how I see you, this is how I want you to think of me. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of messages because he had lived such a much longer life than Penelope had. So it was kind of this whole like, I have all these things I want to say, and so all the little comments and the baby shark and he loved Hawaii, like music, and like his favorite songs were like Hawaiian music. He liked the sound of Hawaiian music. So the flowers, like everything, I tried to capture as many of the things that they talked about as I could. And then halfway through, I was like, why did I do this? It was so labor intensive. And I've done 2 other comic book ones since. Now everybody wants those. So I think I've really got myself into a interesting, wonderful place of like literally telling the story, right? And then the other piece was a collaboration with another artist that had started with Buzzy's and decided sort of halfway through that it was too much for her. It was too intense for her. Yeah. And she had ended up painting the watercolor face part. And that was about as far as she got, which again was in that narrative of like, we don't maybe want just a literal painting of them. But it was so beautiful and so perfect. It looked exactly like him that Amanda was a great collaborator with me at the beginning too. I'd be like sending her pictures like, is this good? Like, I don't know, like, will they like it? And she'd be like, oh, maybe add, this or this, or oh, I love this part. So her comment on it helped to get to this place where he's basically wearing a lion costume. And this is like an assemblage piece. So it's the little lion mane is actually 3D in the real piece. It like sticks out and it's like paper and really like collaged in there. And then they had started like a music nonprofit to honor him. And so that's why he's like the guitar and the tree, because they have these like events at the water, like at parks and stuff where they have music. So that one was a mixture, and that's Prismacolor on wood panel, and I think some paint, maybe acrylic over too. That one's from a while ago. So yeah, every process is really just a matter of like getting all the pieces that are just right. And then the joyful part for me is like feeling like their little energy in my studio all the time. It's like, they'll be like more paint or more glitter, or I'm like, oh, or I'll be like, I really need to go to bed. And they'll be like, oh, keep going. And I'm like, okay. So I get really like connected to them and attached to them. And if they have songs or I'll see little things in the world and I'll think of them. And I think that's really the point of, this whole, but Buzzy's Bees as a whole thing. It's just how like those little people live on through all the different people that they touch, and then hopefully all the people who will see them in the libraries and the different places the exhibits go to. So yeah, that's my process.
I have to say that the pieces are absolutely stunning. Like the reproductions themselves are absolutely stunning. And hearing these, not just you, but from Vanessa as well, there's little details that I'm like, I wish we had the originals. Of course, those are with the families, but like,
Yeah.
I wish we had the originals so we could see these little details to be able to just witness like all these nuances and all of the effort that goes into trying to capture this energy and spirit of the child and their interaction with the family and stuff like that. So
yeah,
like
I wish we could be both. I wish they could be in both places too sometimes, because they're stunning pieces. All the pieces are so
like all of them, just walking through, you're just absolutely like, it's breathtaking just to witness all of these stories and then to go through all these processes. Like this is literally an exhibition that you have to go through more than once, because one, you should just read the stories like right off the bat and absorb what you can, and then come back and really appreciate the time and effort that goes into dissecting all these little details and capturing them to make sure that they're, that they're being represented. So anyways, I'm like, oh, I wish I could like see that. Like I like going up, you try to get close, you try to understand. They're great reproductions, but there's some details that are just missed until you're told. I'm gonna go back and like see if I can see that in the reproduction and stuff.
That's why the interviews we do and talking about them are so important, because it does help to like add that little flair of information. Some of the pieces too that the other artists make are just like, you can't capture that thing. The watercolors especially, you just can't capture like the warmth of it in a reproduction that's there, so some things just can't be photocopied, no matter how awesome the company is.
Okay. So tell us, what did this project mean to you?
Oh, that's such a good question, because it's never what people think it would mean. Or, usually when I tell people, they gasp and they say, oh, I could never do something like that, or how difficult, how hard, and that's actually the opposite of what it is. I think it's so joyful. It always ends up being so joyful and so reconnecting to the fact that death is there. It's coming for everyone. Try as you might, it's coming for you. And it is like the hardest thing for us to understand is why it happens to children, and not everyone's just 95 and they fall asleep like ideal. But it's just how it's just how it works, and we have such a resistance to accepting it. And what it means to me is being able to also get people to realize that we need to be there for each other when these things happen, and we need to talk about them, and being able to just tell people, like, if you meet someone who's had that experience, don't pull away from them, talk to them, cry if you want to, just have whatever reaction. But it means so much to me to be able to have such a beautiful way of showing people and explaining to people, like, no, death is also this, right? It also can be this. And everyone should consider, if they're going through their own death or the death of a loved one, doing something similar, just sitting down and thinking of a memory and trying to create something that embodies that memory for them, instead of all of the hard stuff, which still exists. But if you have that to balance it, it makes that weight a little lighter, I think. And that's what the parents have always said, is like, I feel so much better. Like, they see the paintings and they just make them feel so much better. So it's, it just feels like the work that I'm meant to do. It, brings me so much joy. I mean, really, it's a weird word to choose, but it makes me feel joyful to be able to offer that and to participate. Yeah.
No, just from your history that you were saying, how you worked with therapy, children in therapy, like artistic expression. This is a way of processing this definitive. There's only two certain things in life, and that's life and death. So to accept that, just because it's here doesn't mean that you can't still be sad. You can be angry and sad, but then joyful as well. And I think you embody that as well. Like that's your doula, end of life doula training as well. Just being able to be like, doesn't have to, yes, let's acknowledge that we're sad, but let's acknowledge that there can be beauty as well. So
they go on, it moves forward into another phase every time. And I think that, we're not bypassing, which is what a lot of people want to do, especially to I mean, the biggest thing parents say is, I just want to talk about my kid, like just ask them a question. How old were they? And then, do I know a 9-year-old? Let me talk about a 9-year-old I know, and like try to have a conversation. That just makes them feel so much better to not, because they get shunned otherwise, they get shut out of things. And I think
the fear of speaking about it, we don't want to make them cry. It's just like, well, there's tears of joy too.
Yeah.
And or even if they're sad, it's like,
let's all cry together, to cringe or pull back makes them then feel like they don't want to make you feel bad. So then they don't want, then they pull back. And now, I mean, what's wrong with crying together? It's a sad thing, but it always devolves quickly into like the funny story about, because kids are so funny and weird, and they say the weirdest things, and they have the weirdest energy. And we need more of that, I think, in this world. We all need to like go back to being, even little babies, they just hiccup, or they do weird, funny things, or they have a fixation on stuff. And it's so fun to think about that. So I think we should do that more.
Yes.
Here.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's why we're here. Yeah, totally.
Well, and that kind of leads into this next segment, which I was going to ask you, how do you talk about dying? We're kind of already discussing how it's just like, it's actually a joyful process to you, but are there other ways that you can help start the conversation and stuff like that you would want to put out to the general audience as well?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I it's definitely, it's a hard conversation, not because it's hard, but because our culture makes it hard. We don't have a healthy way of dealing with loss. And again, I think it's weird. Like I said, we all kind of like want to pretend like we don't know it's coming for us. It's coming, and we don't know when. Some of us are sometimes, a lot of people who have terminal illnesses have told me, like, I feel so lucky to know that this is coming, and I can like make the preparations, and I can say what I want to say and do what I want to do in my last days or whatever, and their advice is always like, more people should live their lives like this. They should take the time to sit down and say, well, what do I want people to do to celebrate me? And what it's not just your will. It's like, what music do you want to have played? And
visual writing. That's actually an upcoming workshop for us. So
it's like I think we would all feel lighter in our lives if we removed that fear of death, and we thought about it more like the next thing, right? And I know that's why we have a lot of our spiritual and religious practices talk about like what happens after we die, and that's obviously helpful for a lot of people. But for the people that doesn't resonate with, that can be tricky. So I think, taking time to think about what death is for you and what you think happens to you, is a big step in a thing that we just don't encourage people to do in their lives ever. We'll talk about wills much more often, which is also
estate planning stuff.
Yeah,
practical things that we're like, okay, we'll do this.
Yeah,
and set it aside.
Yeah, and that's all, right? But like, thinking about how you want to talk to your or like have your memorial service, or what do I do with my things, and just living I think we would live our lives a little bit more honestly and maybe a little more aware of other people's feelings if we thought about that. And I think the other thing about that too is like, what do we do with those feelings? What do we do with that fear, and what do we do with that uncertainty or the sadness, and the grief? Grief is such a weird monster, and it affects everyone differently. And I think that's magnified when you live in a culture that doesn't. It just wants you to move on and get over it and let's go. Like, let's never talk about it again. And that's, again, why process-based art is so amazing, because a lot of times it's a great way to sort of transmute and change the heaviness or the sadness. But like, it becomes really valuable then. It becomes like fuel for that activity rather than this like terrible thing that you're trying to get away from that sneaks up on you all the time. Like grief just like sneaks up on people. So having those techniques that feel a little less fear and rejection based, like you have to hide it, would help if we could change that about culture. So when I talk to people, I usually, ask them when did they first learn they should be afraid of dying? Like, why are we afraid of something that happens to everyone and everything?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, where did you get this idea that you should be afraid of that? So that's where I start. And a lot of times people will talk about the first time they experienced death, a grandparent or a friend or whatever. And it turns out that they were never given the opportunity to kind of go through the whole process. They're kind of stuck in that day that they were told to just get over it. And they've been trying to for like however many years that's been. So, trying to find a healthy way to move through all of the parts, the anger and the, frustration too, the things in this culture that we just really don't want people wasting time with. Crying and being mad are not things we're allowed to do. So just, trying to find creative ways too, and especially ways that would honor that person. If that person really liked doing a certain thing, go do that thing, go eat that food, go, engage with them. Yeah, I mean, that's usually where I start. And that's a very like non-secular sort of like middle of the road place to meet anyone, right? Who doesn't matter what they think or believe, they can be in the present right now with their own fear of death and try to figure out how to get a little more comfortable with that. Because of what that turns into is whenever you meet a person who's recently experienced a loss, or not even recently, but just especially with children, someone who's also a child, it puts you right back in that place again. And then you don't want to, now you're having that old reaction too, not just the one that you're having with them a lot of times. So the other reason it's good to move through some of that when death is far away from you and you're not actually in grief right now, it makes it better and easier for you when you meet someone and you want to try to be there for them, to understand that like, oh, we can move through this and not get stuck. And even if that means like this gross laying on the floor, sloppy, whatever this is, to laughing and having fun, which will come. And then we flip back and forth between these extremes. I feel like the more I encourage people to think about that in their living life, the easier it is when death does come, because it will through someone or someone that you love, or sometimes your own terminal illness will come for you. So I wish more people would talk about this. I'm really glad that you guys are offering this as an option. It seems to be a much more common conversation nowadays, which is good.
I think it helps foster empathy when you're ready to discuss it with yourself. Then you're able to discuss it with other people. And that's kind of that whole, you shut down when you hear somebody. So if you start recognizing it in yourself, you can start having that conversation with somebody else. So
yeah, because ultimately we all want to be there for people. That's what we say, but then it's like, oh, but I couldn't, right? Because it put me back in a place that I probably didn't know was there anymore because I had been pushing it down for so long. Or it's always interesting to meet a grown-up who's like still has their like a adult in their 40s or something who like still has their grandparents and still has their parent. You know, it's like they haven't experienced really any of that yet. And they've made it all the way to this, you know, ripe old middle age. And again, I think, you know, it's because we don't talk about it anywhere in school or growing up, or we don't have good, you know, systems in place to help people when it finally does come.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So it's at this time that I usually like to extend to artists. Would you like to thank anybody? This could be people in your life who have helped you through these projects in general, in your artistic lifestyle, people you want to recognize. That's up to you. You don't have to, but
Aww.
if you want to thank your family, friends, this is an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, that's such a great question. No one's ever asked me that before. I think I would, you know, definitely say thank you to my stepdad, even though he's no longer here. But he did teach me a lot. He recognized that I was like really interested in like how do you make colors? Like how do you get these colors? How does this work? So he did teach me a lot of fundamentals. And then probably I would definitely say thank you to my high school art teacher, who I am still friends with on Facebook, even though I'm 47 years old and I graduated a long, long time ago from high school. She's still a high school art teacher in Joseph. And, you know, she just was such a weirdo and in my little tiny town. And she let me be her art aide my senior year when I had like I graduated early and I had like half days, and she's like, well, you could just come the rest of the day and like hang out in the art studio all day long. And I was like, yes, please. So she really gave me so much extra time and attention and support, and really just let me like, she also just let me do whatever I wanted. I'd be like, this is the assignment, but could I do this? And she'd be like, write a thing about it, you know, go ahead. So I think she's probably the one who really like fostered that, like, you know, just don't do it exactly like the instructions, you know, like it's okay. That's what art actually is to like mess around. A lot of people take art class for an easy A, but if you weren't doing that, she would let you do whatever you were doing. And that made a huge impact on me. So yeah. Jennifer Hawkins, you're the best.
Well,
that's a good question though.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for answering that. I love extending that because I get to learn about all these fabulous people who have been inspirational in other people's lives. It's just like, you made a difference. Like, you may never know. She may never. I definitely send this to her. So I hope you watch this so you can see how grateful you are and how wonderful you've been in at least one life.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly there's more. So
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the fact that she's still doing it after all this time.
Yeah.
And loving it, and you know, it says a lot for sure. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage everybody to go see the exhibition going on now through the end of March.
Yes.